Hello, welcome to my channel. Today I'm sharing a story set in the war-scarred lands of Brea. Enjoy an immersive world with Jed, a determined son carrying his family's weight on the farm, while his father has been called off to war. Adelaide, his younger sister, tending to the animals, and their mother keeping the home steady. Then there's Killick, a wounded boy Jed finds in the woods, holding a satchel with secrets. Leave a comment if you'd like a part 2 of this story, or a completely new one with fresh characters and a different world. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink and your favorite snack, and enjoy this short story while you watch me transform this rough opal into a gemstone. Jed tightened his grip on the wooden yoke across his shoulders, balancing 2 sloshing buckets of water as he walked the familiar dirt path to his family's cottage. Dawn's light spilled over the gentle hills of Brea, painting the dew-kissed fields in gold. The small town of Brea had always been a peaceful haven of tilled soil and hard work. A cluster of farms and thatched roofs nestled just outside the shadow of Rosewood's ancient walls. But war had left its mark even here. The once lush pastures bore the scars of old trenches and burned patches where Pelopian raiders had swept through in seasons past. At the crest of the hill, Jed paused to catch his breath and gazed eastward. In the distance, the grand city of Rosewood perched atop Mount Cantham rose from the morning mist, its marbled stone ramparts and tall watchtowers catching the sun. Those walls had stood firm for centuries, a symbol of safety for the outlying villages. Yet now, even from afar, Jed imagined he could see cracks in Rosewood's defenses. He'd heard whispered reports at the trading post that the city's guards were stretched thin, that each Pelopian raid edged closer, that more refugees streamed through Rosewood's gates seeking shelter, until even the mighty city groaned under the weight of fear. Brea lay in the long shadows of Rosewood's falling defenses, and every family in town felt the chill of that shadow. Jed resumed his walk, the weight of the water steady and familiar. The scent of the damp earth and cold straw filled the cool air. As he neared the cottage, he saw his younger sister, Adelaide, scattering grain for the henwinds from her apron. Their mother was already in the vegetable patch, inspecting shoots of early ginger roses for pests. This was life on the farm, simple, honest, and demanding. Jed wouldn't have wanted it any other way, if only there wasn't a war threatening to rip it all apart. He set the buckets down by the trough and rolled his shoulders. Adelaide greeted him with a gap-toothed grin, and Jed ruffled her hair in passing. Inside the barn, the morning light slanted through the wooden slats, illuminating motes of dust and the shapes of tools hung on the walls. Jed's father had left for Brixton months ago to help fortify the city's defenses, leaving Jed as the man of the house. It was a responsibility he took seriously. At barely 17, he rose before dawn each day to do the work of 2, determined to keep his family safe and fed until father returned, if the war allowed him to return. Jed's gaze drifted to the back of the barn where a peculiar contraption rested on a workbench. It was an old Athian device, a relic from an age long past when Athian technology had powered cities and lit up the night. Now such artifacts were rare, dug up from ruins or battlefields, mostly misunderstood by scholars and tinkers. This one looked like a metal box, fitted with copper filigree and glass dials, something between a lantern and a music box, though it had never made music. Most folks in Brea wouldn't bother with the broken hunk of ancient scrap, but Jed saw potential. More importantly, Jed felt something, an intuition, almost a kinship with the thing, whenever he worked on it. He wiped his hands on a rag and gently prodded the device's innards with a small iron pick. A week ago, he'd traded 3 sacks of turnips for the relic, hoping to fix the device for good. He had spent spare moments each evening tinkering by firelight. This morning, as he nudged a gear into alignment, the device whirred to life, Jed oddly feeling a connection to it as though it was thanking him. The glass dials glowed faintly with azure light, casting dancing blue patterns across the rafters. Jed's heart jumped in excitement. He glanced over his shoulder to see if anyone else noticed, but Adelaide was still outside, and Mother was bent over her tilled tomatoes. It was just him and this wondrous machine. The azure light pulsed warmly, and a soft chime sounded from the box, like the ring of distant bells. Jed grinned in delight. For a moment, under the spell of that gentle light and sound, he forgot about wars and raids and hungry mouths. In that moment, he was just a boy, discovering a bit of magic in his own barn. A shrill call from outside shattered the reverie. "Jed, are you off to the trading docks yet?" It was his mother, her voice edged with equal parts affection and worry. Jed carefully powered down the device, the light dimming as he slid the panel shut, and hurried out of the barn. His mother stood by the fence, a basket of vegetables on her hip. She nodded toward the road. "The trading docks will be busy today. See if you can get a fair price for these, and ask old Marrow if he's heard news from Brixton, will you? Your father is expected any day now." "Of course, Mother," Jed replied, taking the basket and placing it in the handcart already half filled with produce and a burlap sack of grain and other amenities needed for his 4-day trip. They needed salt, flour, and perhaps medicine if any apothecary's stock came in. He also hoped to trade for more parts. Now that he'd seen the device flicker to life, he was determined to see it fully working. His mother's eyes softened as she brushed a bit of gold straw off Jed's sleeve. "Be careful," she said quietly. She didn't need to say why. Everyone knew why. The roads were still considered safe by daylight, but there had been stories. Travelers attacked at the fringes of the woodlands. Pelopian scouts spotted not far beyond Brea's outskirts. "I will," Jed promised. He gave her a reassuring smile, hefted the cart's handles, and started down the rutted path to town. The 2-day journey passed without incident. Jed bartered eggs and vegetables at the open-air trading docks in the heart of Cantham, a dusty square flanked by a few weathered stalls and a diner where news flowed as freely as water. He swapped friendly words with old Marrow, the tanner, who grumbled about the price of leather and muttered that Rosewood's bonder wasn't doing enough to protect the outlying farms. Jed offered a polite nod at that. No one in Brea disagreed. Everyone was on edge. There were more people in town than usual. Some were villagers from further out, come to trade quickly before hurrying back to reinforce their homesteads. Others were strangers with haunted eyes, likely refugees who had trickled down from Rosewood or beyond. Jed overheard anxious whispers as he made his rounds. Talk of a Pelopian attack on northern Brixton 2 nights past, of a skirmish in the forests west of Rosewood, of a column of refugees arriving through the city gates. Each tale tightened the knot of worry in Jed's stomach. Brea had been spared so far, but he knew it was only luck, and luck always ran out eventually. By midday, Jed had finished his business. He'd managed to trade for a sack of coarse flour, a jar of salt, some dried beans, and, to his solitary indulgence, 2 small ancient Athian communicators with all its dials and knobs intact. The tinkerer who sold it swore they were useless, but Jed haggled him down to 2 silver pennies. He had a hunch he could coax a spark out of them, given time, and could then speak to his father from vast distances. With his cart lighter and the sun creeping past its zenith, Jed set out on the long journey home. The more scenic road leading out of the trading docks curled through a stretch of dense woodland that separated the town from the open fields. Jed didn't mind the woods. Normally, he found the tranquility a welcome break from chores. The rosebark willows stood tall and ancient on either side of the dirt road, their interlaced branches casting cool, dappled shadows that shifted through the breeze. In better times, he might have dawdled to pick tealberries or watch tree mice dart across the canopy. Today, however, he kept a brisk pace, keenly aware of how the hairs on his arms prickled with every creak of a branch or rustle in the undergrowth. The weight of the morning's grim news sat heavy in his gut. He imagined Pelopian scouts creeping through these very woods, eyes keen for unwary travelers. He pictured an ambush, sudden plasma streaks from Attawat rifles whistling from between the willows, a rush of footfalls behind him. Jed shook the thoughts away. It's broad daylight, he reassured himself. Pelopians haven't been sighted this close to Brea. Not yet, anyway. He was about halfway through the woods when his boot struck something odd on the path. Jed slowed to a stop and looked down. Scattered across the dirt were small, charred craters indicating plasma shots. Jed's gaze turned upwards as he rounded a corner of thick rosebark willows, a sense of dread sweeping over him. Apprehensively leaving his cart behind, he crept forward. As the corner gave way and a small valley opened, remnants of a recently raided caravan lay strewn and smoldered. To Jed's horror, he witnessed glowless men, women, and children. His world began to spin uncontrollably as the gruesome scene imprinted into his memories. Jed's instinct was to run and leave everything behind. He fumbled backwards, tripping over his own feet as he made his retreat. As he laid on his back, slightly disoriented, a tether of light slowly extended brightly from his abdomen. Appearing as a wisp of light, it delicately danced into woods off the road till it arrived at a shallow depression in the earth. His gaze followed the mist of light to a clump of bushes and fallen leaves at the base of a gnarled elm brush a few paces into the undergrowth. Something, a huddled shape, was partially hidden under that layer of leaves. Jed's heart quickened. It might have been a fanghound, curled up and sleeping. But a fanghound wouldn't cover itself with leaves. It would be searching for its master. He carefully stood and walked, stepping off the road. The woods seemed to hold their breath around him. In the distance, a tabby jay called, and somewhere water dripped from last night's rain. Jed eased one foot forward, then another, pushing aside a fern with deliberate quiet. A soft groan drifted up from the leaf pile. Jed froze. That was no animal sound. "Hello?" he called gently, kneeling as he reached the edge of the leaves. With one hand, he slowly brushed the damp leaves and twigs aside. Beneath them, curled up and trembling, was a boy, much younger than Jed. At most, only 6 years of age, his body caked with dirt and sweat. The boy's clothes were torn and smeared with mud and something darker. He clutched a small leather satchel tightly against his chest. Dark, matted hair obscured most of his face, and for a moment, Jed wondered if he was conscious. But at Jed's touch and voice, the boy flinched. His eyes snapped open, wild. His illuminated light green eyes reminded Jed of storm clouds as they let their bolts of rage streak across the night sky. "It's all right," Jed said softly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I won't hurt you." The boy's gaze darted around as if expecting someone, or something else, to appear from the woods. Seeing only Jed, he tried to push himself upright. A sharp hiss of pain escaped the boy's lips, and he crumpled back down, one hand pressed to his side. Jed caught a glimpse of crimson seeping between the boy's fingers. He was wounded. "God's below," Jed breathed. He shrugged off his wool cloak and draped it over the boy's shoulders. The day was mild, but the boy was shivering hard. "You're hurt. Let me help you, all right?" For a moment, the boy looked ready to bolt despite his injury. His muscles tensed under the cloak, his eyes still full of fear. Jed kept his voice calm and gentle. "My name's Jed. I live on a farm not far from here. You're safe now, I promise." The boy watched him for a long, tense moment. Finally, with visible effort, he allowed himself to relax slightly against the trunk of the elm shrub, panting from pain and exhaustion. I'm Killick," he whispered, voice cracking. Jed offered a reassuring smile. "Killick," he repeated. It wasn't a name he recognized from Brea, Rosewood, or even Cantham. A refugee then, he guessed, perhaps from one of the northern villages hit by the raids. He carefully moved the boy's hand aside to inspect the wound. A ragged tear in Killick's tunic revealed a nasty gash along his ribs, crudely bandaged with a strip of linen. The cloth was soaked through with blood. It looked like a sword slash or a plasma graze. Either way, it wasn't fresh, maybe a day old and already showing angry red at the edges. Jed felt a surge of worry and anger on the boy's behalf. What had this kid been through? Jed uncorked the water skin at his belt and held it to Killick's lips. "Here, drink, slowly." Killick's trembling hands closed around the water skin. He gulped down a mouthful, then another, before Jed gently eased it away. Easy, not too fast, or you'll make yourself sick. Killick coughed and nodded, water trickling down his chin. He pulled Jed's cloak tighter around his small frame. Up close, Jed could see the boy's face was gaunt and smudged with soot, his cheeks hollow. He looked like he hadn't slept or eaten in days. We can't stay here, Jed thought. Plupians are nearby. We need to get you out of the open, he said quietly. I'll take you to my farm. My mother can treat that wound. You'll be safe with us. Killick glanced down the road toward Brea, then back the way he'd come. Northward, Jed noted. The boy swallowed hard and gave a tiny nod. Relief washed through Jed. He hadn't realized until now how much he'd fear the boy might refuse and try to run off again. Jed slipped an arm under Killick's shoulders and legs, slowly lifting him. Killick bit back a cry, leaning heavily into Jed. He was light, scarcely more weight than a full sack of grain, and that fact alone made Jed's chest ache. They hobbled a few steps to the cart. As Jed helped Killick settle onto a bundle of folded twilled sacks, the boy suddenly jolted upright, panic flaring in his eyes. My satchel, Killick gasped, looking wildly toward the pile of leaves where he had lain. I've got it, Jed assured him. He reached back to the base of the elm shrub, retrieving the small leather bag the boy had clung to. The flap had fallen open, and inside Jed glimpsed something metal, sheathed in dark pebbled scabbard with strange markings, like the ones on Athian relics. He shut the flap quickly, handing the satchel to Killick, who received it with trembling hands and a grateful, protective clutch. Whatever was in that bag must be important. Jed decided not to ask about it now. The boy was frightened enough. All right, in you go, he said, trying to keep his tone cheerful. He picked Killick up and laid him carefully into the cart. Killick stifled a groan, his face white with pain as he propped himself against a sack of turnips. Jed grabbed a blanket from the cart supplies and wrapped it safely around the boy for extra cushion, tucking it snugly to keep him warm. With Killick settled, Jed took hold of the cart handles and pressed forward again, moving quicker but still mindful of every rotten stone. The wheels creaked and the axles groaned in protest. Then, with a sudden snap, the cart collapsed, its wooden frame giving way beneath them. Killick let out a sharp gasp, his small body jolting from the drop. Pain surged through him, his face twisting in agony as his breath came in short, uneven bursts. Jed reacted instantly, scooping him up before he could slip further. He cradled Killick against his chest, feeling the boy's trembling frame in his arms. Killick whimpered softly, his body stiff at first, then slowly relaxing as exhaustion overtook him. His breathing, once quick and labored, began to slow, his grip on Jed's tunic loosening. Jed adjusted his hold, pressing Killick closer. Just rest, little brother, he murmured, his voice steady but quiet. Killick stirred slightly, as if trying to respond, but his eyelids fluttered, too heavy to keep open. His body slackened in Jed's arms, the tension fading as warmth and fatigue finally pulled him under. Jed felt the steady rise and fall of Killick's chest, his breaths growing deep and even. He had fallen asleep. Jed exhaled, tightening his grip, then continued forward, carrying him the rest of the way. His mind raced ahead of his feet. How would his mother react to him bringing home a wounded stranger? Compassionately, he knew. That was her way. She had tended injured farmhands and sang many songs of comfort to stray travelers before, and more recently even a pair of Rosewood refugees who'd passed through town. She would treat Killick's injuries, feed him, and give him a place to rest. But the danger, if this boy had been attacked by Plupians, was it during a raid? Would someone come looking for a survivor? Jed clenched his jaw. No, he wouldn't let anything happen to his family or to Killick. After walking all day and most of the night, they finally emerged from the tree line, and the familiar expanse of the farm came into view. Rows of tilled tomatoes sprouting in the fields, the low stone fence, the cottage's thatched roof, and the barn beyond it. Afternoon sunlight slanted across the land, and Jed could just make out his mother leaving her garden and walking through their front door, no doubt wondering why he was late. Jed swallowed, gathering his resolve. The world's troubles were arriving at their doorstep sooner than he'd hoped, but he would face them. He glanced at Killick, who had drifted into a weary half-sleep, still clutching that mysterious satchel even now. Jet had a feeling that finding this boy was going to change not only the course of his own life, but perhaps the fate of Brea and Rosewood beyond. For now, though, the first step was simple and clear: get Killick to safety, one careful step at a time, and be ready for whatever came next. Thank you for joining me for this original short story. If you'd like to hear a part 2 to this story, or if you'd like to hear a story with new characters, like, comment, and subscribe.